Tracy Chirikas. I am with the Alliance, and this NARCAN training that we're bringing forth to your community, we believe is just so critical to every single one of us. And we are thankful for both law enforcement as well as our emergency first responders and fire department. Those are truly our first responders. They have the boots on the ground in this scenario, but we have another opportunity, and you're going to see that throughout the training. As family members, as community members, we also have now taken on a role that we might not have wanted to take on, and that is that of a first responder. So when we go through the training tonight, we want you to feel educated, equipped, and empowered to save lives that might not otherwise have had that second chance. Because it's not just the individual who overdoses that their life is impacted, it's the whole family who has been impacted, as well as the community. We're robbed of an individual who might bring us forth some great artistic talent, some amazing other attribute that we wouldn't otherwise have the opportunity to experience. This topic has been near and dear on my heart for the last 7 years. I have been a certified NARCAN trainer for 7 years. When I was trained on needle vial. And needle vial, in my opinion, at that time frame, was frightening for those of us in the community because we're not medical professionals. And it's not a perfect world environment. This isn't something we do 24/7, right? Hopefully. And I didn't feel that it was the right thing to bring into the community, a needle vial scenario. So we waited. We received a grant from Kaleo for the Avizio auto injector kits that talk to you. And we were given a very small sample of those, which were 200. And we got those into the hands of individuals we knew who were at the most risk. And it's challenging to admit that, but we have support groups that you're going to see throughout our presentation where we know families are struggling day in and day out. So we got those into the hands where we knew that their family members were struggling. After that grant, we received a grant from Blue Cross Blue Shield, and it was at this town hall here in Southfield in April of, oh my gosh, when was that, 2017? When we first launched out intranasal NARCAN, and really it was a result of Judge Nance's town hall. What an amazing platform for us to introduce that. This room was standing room only for that training, and that was after a 2-hour town hall. Then they sat through another hour training, right? That spoke volumes to all of us, that you all want this kind of training. So I want to welcome all of you here, giving us your valuable time. We know how valuable your time is and that you chose to give it to us this evening. I do want to go over some quick housekeeping. If we could hold all of our questions till the end when we have our professionals up here who can properly answer those questions, I would appreciate that. That will allow us to move through the presentation a little quicker, but chances are a lot of the questions that you may have will be addressed throughout the presentation. Secondly, if you have cell phones, please turn them to vibrate and turn them upside down so that you can give all of us up here doing the presenting your full attention, because the skills you learn tonight will help you save a life. And it's going to help our first responders by getting to the scene much quicker. We need to shorten the time for our first responders. We don't want to delay, right? We want to get them there as quickly as possible. So with that being said, here we go. The Alliance was formed in 2003 with a vision to be nationally recognized as a leader of best practices in collaboration on substance abuse prevention initiatives that create and sustain healthy communities. So we're not just about creating them, we want to sustain them as well. And that's a constantly evolving ball that constantly is moving. Our mission is through substance abuse prevention, mental and physical wellness, and recovery support programs, the Alliance connects, strengthens, and mobilizes strategic partners to promote healthier communities. So a lot of our partners tonight that are here are our resources that are out in the lobby. Please visit their tables. Our law enforcement, our fire department, our coalition. These are all direct strategic partners that can help you connect with the resources you need. Our core values as stewards in our communities, we believe in collaboration, prevention, and we're extremely results driven. Isn't that interesting that it spells out CPR? I don't even think we knew we were doing that at the time that it came out. So, gee. The Alliance is responsible for all of Oakland County, so we hold the NARCAN contract through the county as well as MDHHS, which is the state level. Our county consists of 1.3 million people. That's a lot of people that we are responsible for. We have 20 community coalitions, one right here in Southfield, as Tiffany Tilley just announced to all of you, sorry. She is an amazing resource to get you connected very, very quickly. Inside of the circles are our 5 family support and recovery groups, because NARCAN is just one step in this process, right? We want to keep them alive, but then we have to connect their families into treatment and help. Because if we send our loved ones off to treatment, we have this amazing mindset that when they go off to treatment, and that could be 4 days, it could be 10 days, it could be 21, it could be 6 months, it could be a year. We just think that when they return, they're going to be healed and just return to normal. We've cleaned off their roots somewhat, but what is the family doing? What happens when we put a cleaned off plant right back into unclean soil? We all have a part in this, right? So we all have a part in the recovery. And we learn so much by coming to these groups because we learn what our loved ones are feeling or experiencing by listening to others. Unfortunately, with addiction or substance use disorder, much like suicide, the grief support groups are very different. No one stands in line with a casserole. No one knows what to say. The families are devastated. They feel very isolated during this time frame. So we have a specialized group just for our grief families that meet and can share and talk the same language. From time to time, they've allowed me to come in and speak, but I represent something different to them. I do have a loved one in long-term recovery. For him, that means he hasn't had a drink or a drug since October 27th, 2012. So when they look at me, they think, what did you do that I didn't do? And it has nothing to do with that. It has nothing whatsoever. To date, this was updated in November. These are all the areas that we've brought forth NARCAN training to date. We have been very busy, and we will continue to be busy as long as you, the community, wants the training, wants to be a part of the solution. I'm sick and tired of talking about the problem. I want to talk about the solution. I want to plug into my prevention organization. I want to bring healthier strategies to people who struggle. If you've ever smoked cigarettes and you've tried to quit over and over again, it's the same thing. Do we shame ourselves? Sure we do, but we go right back to it, right? In the yellow are upcoming potential coalitions that are coming on board. One will be up in Brandon and one will be coming down in South Lyon within this year. We just brought on Farmington Hills as of December 1, so we are now up to 20. Once we have South Lyon and Brandon on board, our county is 100% covered. Approximately 130 lives are lost every single day due to an accidental overdose. I'm going to use the term accidental because no one gets up in the morning saying, you know what, today I'm going to overdose. Every single situation is accidental. And we need to change our mindset on that and how we think about that and how we approach that. How we approach that individual struggling and how we approach that family. This is not a moral failing. There's been a 5-time increase in opioid overdose between 1999 and 2016. Maybe that is because in the 90s, our doctors started prescribing Vicodin, right, for pain because it was considered non-addictive in an American medical journal. But then also, that's also when the Rate Your Pain scale came on board. Anybody remember all of those? Didn't you find that odd? Rate your pain. Well, my pain is going to be different than yours, right? I have a super high pain tolerance. So for me, somebody like me, I'm also at risk because I wait till the absolute last minute to treat that pain, and then I want it gone because, especially with migraines, we'll wait, and then we'll take too much, and we are at risk. Me, too. 75% of all opioid overdoses occur outside of a medical setting. A lot of times right in the family home, but more what we're seeing right now is in parking lots of Meijer, Kroger, Rite Aid. It's busy, so they feel like they won't be noticed when it's happening. For example, last Thursday I finished a NARCAN training and I stopped at the grocery store on my way home, and there was an individual slumped over in his vehicle and people were panicking. What is wrong? Now, mind you, I was equipped, but the very first step that we're going to teach you tonight was I called 911. I don't know what I'm going to come up against, right? When I pushed the individual to see if he was conscious, he did rouse a little bit, but all of the symptoms were there, which Chief Manassi is Captain Medici. See? Anybody can do this. Anybody can butcher somebody's name, even me. So our goal tonight is to train you in Oakland County to administer nasal NARCAN. If you don't live in Oakland County, please rest assured you don't have to live in Oakland County tonight. You're coming through the training, and we want to make sure you leave here educated, equipped, and empowered. We want you to know what a drug overdose looks like so that you can make that proper distinguishing remark. We want you to know how easy it is to administer intranasal NARCAN. And then more importantly, we want you to be able to connect people to resources. You're not done just when you administer it, right? There's a whole nother layer that goes on. In this cycle of addiction, this is identical between prescription opioids and street opioids. Heroin, Percocet, Dilaudid, Tramadol, they all have the same chemical composition. So I'm tired of people putting their noses up. I don't do heroin. It's the same thing, chemically speaking, right? It attacks the same area of the brain. So we need to stop putting people into silos. It is what it is, and we need to start addressing it for what it is. It can start out legitimately through a doctor's prescription, which was my son's case. He had a simple tonsillectomy in the 10th grade, and they issued 30 days of Vicodin, taken as directed. We took as directed, okay? Or it can start out with recreational use. Maybe you have that weekend partier. A lot of times in middle school, we want to experiment, which is why your coalition talks heavily about your medicine cabinet and making sure your meds are locked up, that you know what's in your medicine cabinet. Because youth, while they're creative, they don't have all of their brains about them yet. So they're just grabbing whatever pill bottle they can find. They come to these parties called Skittle parties and some other kinds of parties. They dump the pills into a fishbowl type scenario. They have a scooper, all the bottles are gone, and then they take handfuls. So imagine what the scene looks like for our first responders. They have no idea what these young people have been ingesting. Do you think that might cause them to have a little bit of a challenge on their hand, right? And while we're screaming, save them, we have no idea what they've ingested. Both of these scenarios can lead to dependence, either through prolonged use, because it doesn't take long for addiction to set in, or predisposition. So if you are predisposed through your genetic line, maybe addiction runs in your family, or mental health issues run in your family, we need to start talking about it. We need to not be so quiet. We need to talk so our kids can make informed, educated decisions. We have a duty. I come from the era when nobody talked about anything. That was considered airing our dirty laundry. You know, we got to stop, right? We got to come together now as a community to really help everyone make better choices. We can connect better. We don't need to hide anymore. You have knowledge I don't have. I wish somebody would have reached out to me when I was struggling, because I had no idea. And I didn't know step 1 from step 10. I had no idea. And I was frightened. And I would have spent my last savings dollar to get him the help he needed. Any parent would, right? It will, more times than not, lead to addiction. Now, a lot of times you will hear people say, I'm not addicted, I'm dependent. Okay, there's a super fine line between dependency and addiction. Now, I'm not talking about the medications that we take that we are dependent upon for life, for quality of life. Thyroid medication, diabetes medication, high blood pressure. I'm not talking about that. I am talking about the benzodiazepines. I'm talking about the opiate-based medications. There's a super fine line between dependency and addiction. If you find that when you are being titrated down responsibly, hopefully, and you are in pain, sometimes what a lot of people say is, I'm in pain in places that I didn't hurt from the original subscription. Then we know that we need to seek alternative measures to help us wean down properly. The first step is usually going out on the street and buying pills. And they will, or they'll borrow, or they'll steal them from your medicine cabinet. You know, if they're your kids, first they start within that inner circle because it's safer, right? Nobody's going to turn them in if we start safer. So parents, grandparents, aunts and uncles, they always keep it in the family. Once everybody gets onto that plane of thought, then they go out and they will buy from a friend, they will borrow from a friend. Problem is these pills are now being adulterated because they're fake, that they can buy on the street. The tolerance for these drugs go up, so does the cost. For example, one 80 milligram tablet of Oxycontin sells on the street for $80. So at my son's heightened point of addiction, he was using 6 80 milligram tablets a day. Do the math. Okay? So what happens when we have that scenario? We don't know because I wasn't educated. We want to make sure each and every one of you are educated. You start to recognize some of these things that we're talking about tonight, and you reach out because they're going to get arrested for petty theft. That's going to be the next step. It's the little things that start to occur that we just think, oh, is that normal teenage behavior? Absolutely not. So we need to band together instead of being so ashamed and work together. The pills become too expensive, so then they will go to snorting heroin. When we are afflicted with this addiction, we have a ladder too, right? We have a line in the sand in which we're willing to cross or not. So 9 times out of 10, they will start with snorting heroin. It's very rare that they start right away with injecting IV heroin use, but they will start snorting. And then the tolerance goes up, so does the cost, and then their best friend will tell them, hey, I've got a better way for you. And their best friend will be the one who injects them the very first time. So it's this ladder that goes on. I'm going to go up and down here. So I'm going to go out to the state level, and I'm going to come down to the county level. There were 2,335 drug overdose-related deaths statewide in 2016, compared to 1,981 in 2015. Most of those deaths were all related to opioids. Drug overdose deaths increased 18% in that 1 year for the state. That's a very alarming amount to increase. In 2016 now in Oakland County, there were 165 drug-related overdose deaths compared to 125 in 2015. Still not enough to make anybody start to question that, right? In 2017, however, we had 311 overdose deaths, almost doubled from the preceding year. Unbelievable. That's not just 311 lives that were lost. Do the math. If you do simple math and put a mom and a dad and maybe a sibling with that, quadruple that number. That's how many lives were directly impacted by this disease. In 2018, we experienced our first decrease in overdose-related deaths, and I'm going to attribute that to people such as yourself, because we started training in our communities. 2017 was a big banner year for us to get out and start training. I'm sorry, in 2018, we started at the tail end of 2017. So we decreased by 28.2% to 222. Unfortunately, we are running very close to that number. If not, I think we may exceed this year. And that's because our professionals are going to share why that is. So real time from January to June, that's about as close to real time as I can give you right now because of the statistics and the way the medical examiner's office reports work. There were, for the state, 2,314 overdoses reported. Not every overdose results in death. That's why you're all here. You want to be a part of keeping people alive, so I commend you. 319 of those were fatal. 1,721 doses of naloxone were administered. That's huge. That doesn't count what the community has done. This is just our EMS data. That's impressive. This is our case for why NARCAN should be in our law enforcement, our fire department, in all of your hands. If you use the medication we give you tonight, I don't want you to be ashamed. I've shared my story. You cannot cause me to think any differently. I want you to call me and let me know, Tracy, I used it, or Amanda, I used it. Great, we're gonna ask you some very simple questions. Can you remember where you were trained? Can you remember, usually people are calling me the same day, if not the very next day, because they're watching how critical their role is in this. Was EMS called? Were they transported? How many doses were used? Now, when we say that, you are given 2 4-milligram doses. If you only know about yours, when first responders arrive, our police and fire, get out of their way, okay? They are the professionals. We've done what we needed to do to keep everything calm, but we need to step out and let them do their job. We do not need to get in their way. We will ask if they are transported, and that's pretty easy to tell if you can see if EMS has got the gurney and off they're going. If you don't feel that you need to stand around, if it's in a parking lot, you don't have to stand around. You can say, I don't know, Tracy. But EMS was called and they arrived. This is for my statistical gurus in the group. We wanted to find out if there was some rhyme or reason between months, between years, of when people tend to overdose more frequently. And there's no rhyme or reason to it, because that would help us, right, gauge where do we bring it, how do we bring it, why do we bring it. And there's no rhyme or reason, which tells us it's a disease. So I've told you about that. NARCAN, or naloxone, is effective on any opiate, anytime, anywhere. I want you to remember that. Any opiate, anytime, anywhere. It's effective on the opiate only. Works on heroin, Loratab, methadone, Oxycontin, Vicodin, Norco, Percocet, codeine, fentanyl. Duragesic is also fentanyl. I should draw a line for my paramedics in the group. Morphine, oxycodone, because they're the ones who remind me of that every time. Hydrocodone, Darvocet. So I saved tramadol to the very end. And I saved tramadol on purpose. So the VA uses tramadol a lot. It's one of their standard protocols in opiate-based medications for pain. But now a new interesting thing has started to crop up where our veterinaries, I have a dog, and they issued prednisone for the inflammation. I had an hour-long class on prednisone and how to properly titrate my dog down on prednisone. No one talked to me about tramadol. And they were sending me home with 50 tablets, I think it was 58 tablets of 50 milligram tramadol. And when I waited and did everything I was supposed to do, I stopped and I said, when are you going to talk to me about tramadol? And this was their response: your dog won't become addicted. And I said, I'm not worried about my dog. What do we do with our pet medications when we get home? So we don't forget to give it to our loved fur babies, right? We put it on the counter. What happens when somebody who's struggling and is desperate from the disease of addiction, what happens then? So this one particular vet did take that to heed, and now they're using Suboxone. So I'm okay with that. It's a step in the right direction, but tramadol made me very nervous. We're not just here to teach you NARCAN. We're here to equip you with some knowledge so that when you are at the doctor or you're at the vet or you're hearing something weird, you have the right now, because I certainly didn't feel like I had the right to push back. Push back and request a different substance than what you were given. We've also placed up here drugs.com. So this is a wonderful website for you to download onto your phone. If you have a loved one struggling with the disease of addiction and you know they're struggling with either benzodiazepines or opiates or whatever, you can check the chemical composition of that medication before you even leave the doctor's office and actually demand a different prescription. And I would like to introduce Captain Medici. She responded to Captain, so that was good.
So what we're going to look at is how does the opiates affect the body. So when someone takes an opiate, and that's all opiate-based out of the poppy plant, your morphine, your heroin, that kind of drug, what it does is it sits on the receptor on the brain, and it blocks the pain receptors, right, because you take it for pain, and it blocks that, and it could be for hours, depending on what it is, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, okay? So it's going to sit there until it wears off, okay? So some of the most common overdose fatalities is decreased tolerance after a period of abstinence. So somebody that has been locked up or has to do drug testing or that type of thing, or even go through a rehab, they build up a tolerance, but when they have a break off of it, then that tolerance goes down, right? And so what happens is that if they fall off the wagon or if they go back on, they think they can go right back to where they started on that amount, and that's where we start to see some of these fatalities, right? Right, you know, I've only done CPR one time off duty, and it was somebody who was just released out of a rehab center, and he pulled up. I was at a gas station, and she said she just got out of rehab and she's overdosed. Because they come out thinking they can go right back to where they started. And that's where we start to see some of these fatalities. Some of these long-acting, high-potency opiates. And we're looking at, fentanyl is one of the most potent ones out there, but it's not as long-lasting. But what the thing is that they're mixing it, right? And we don't know. We don't know anymore. We're going to assume the worst right off the get-go. Opiates and benzodiazepines. So opiates we talked about is the morphines, anything with the phene at the end, right? The heroin, that type of thing. The benzodiazepine, those are the ones that you see that are very common. The Valium, the Xanax, right? Those are all benzodiazepines. Those are the ones that it's not going to be affected by NARCAN. You can give NARCAN all day long to somebody that has taken a Xanny bar or a Xanax bar. It's not going to affect them. It's something that's going to have to wear off, okay? And those benzodiazepines have the same symptoms as somebody with an opiate, okay? So it's stuff that you have to look out for. Opiates and alcohol, okay? So if we think about an opiate, an opiate and alcohol are both kind of a depressant, right? You might get the high at first, but then it's a depressant. The more you take of an opiate, the more depressant it becomes. Because what do they always say? They're always chasing after that what? That first high, right? It's euphoric at first, but then it becomes, as you become dependent, right, they're chasing after that. And what goes best with an opiate or a benzodiazepine? Alcohol. When are we going to do it? During the holidays, right? What's coming up now? The holidays. But what we're finding is in this, in drug addiction is also goes hand in hand with mental health, right? We don't know if it's a dependent or a drug addiction, or is it mental health, or is it combined, right? Or is it one and the same? I mean, that's what they're looking at now. So we're coming into the holidays, you know, where people start to get depressed. Their families are fighting. They're alone, or loved ones away. And those are the ones that you really have to watch out for and reach to make sure that they're doing okay. Not only for addiction, but also for mental health. Your opiates, your benzodiazepine, and your alcohol, right? So, for instance, we're starting to see a rise in the elderly community. And so just imagine this. You go to a hospital right now, you have pain, severe pain, and they used to give you the Vicodin or the Percocet or something along that line. Now it's Tramadol, right? Now, you go to the emergency room, you're not going to get that. If you get it, it's going to be less than 7-day supply, because the ER doctor cannot give you a prescription any longer than a couple days of some type of pain medication. You're going to get Motrin or Toradol. Toradol is a Motrin, right? That's what you're going to get in the hospital. So these doctors that they're now cracking down on these people, the elderly that's had arthritis pain or back pain for years, have been on these. Now all of a sudden they're saying, you know what? I can't give it to you anymore. So what do? They go out into the community and they start getting, because they are addicted. They're not bad people. It's not their fault they were prescribed it for 20 some years, right? We're starting to see 60, 70-year-olds overdose on heroin because they can't get their pain medication. They're in severe pain, they're going through withdrawal, and now you put them out in the community. So you had the opiates, the benzodiazepine, and the alcohol, right? Severe arthritis, benzodiazepine, high anxiety, lost their spouse of 30 years, now alone, right? And now you add alcohol to that. Is it a bad person? No. But you can see it every day. You can see this happening, you know. And I bet you in the next couple of years you're going to see in communities, because a lot of times they look at like 50 and under. To pull the statistics for the Asian community on this is going to be through the roof, I think, because they threw them out there with no solution. There's no solution to give to these except, you know what, you're on your own. And what are they going to do? They're going to seek the streets to help them with their addiction, because they're not going to look at, like, you know, my grandma's addicted, right? They just know they have pain. So we're seeing 70-year-olds ODing on a bus because they're trying to get their next high, or to relieve the pain. Opiates and stimulants, right? Ritalin used to be a real big thing, right? Now it's Adderall, right? And then you throw in the opiates. Ritalin and Adderall is supposed to be for attention deficit, right? And now it's like a college kid can go and say, you know what, I can't study, here you go, here's Adderall. And now they're partying. And now, hey, try this, right? So you can imagine how they're combining these, and it's throwing us through a loop like we have no idea. And we won't even talk about the synthetic stuff that they're just making up as they go along, right? We have one that is called glitter. You know, they put it on their face, they absorb it. And so we got an advisory to say, hey, if you see this, don't touch it, because it can kill you. And we're like, well, I mean, how many people wear glitter? A lot of people, you know what I mean? So they just don't know, and so it's really kind of hitting the community. Polyprescribed with pre-existing health condition in older adults. So we talked that poly just means many. You know, they're prescribed many. Sometimes we run on the elderly, and they don't know what's going on, and they're on a list of medication because they see this doctor, and this doctor. And sometimes I said, you know what you really need to do is Control-Alt-Delete figure out your medication and let's narrow it down for you. Because you're taking one that counteracts this one and this one. So if you have a loved one, right, because they could accidentally overdose just by trying to take care of themselves. Signs and symptoms of an overdose. Pinpoint pupils. You know how they say that the eyes are to the windows of the soul, something like that, right? So when we talk about the pupils, and this you can do by any loved one, if you want to know kind of what's going on with the pupils, and I'm just going to give you a real quick rundown on when we look at the pupils, what's happening. So we want to look at the pupils. So the top one is a normal pupil, right? Kind of look, normal. If you put a light in it or you blink their eyes, they open it, it's going to react, right? It's going to dilate or constrict. Now this middle one is pinpoint. We call it pinpoint pupils. And the reason is when you have pinpoint pupils, it's usually an opiate based within the system. So if you take Vicodin because you had surgery, you're going to get pinpoint pupils, right? Now, we can look at the pupils even for a stroke, right? So if someone is on an opiate, they're going to have pinpoint pupils, both of them. If you have one pinpoint and the other one dilated, it's usually it's a sign of a stroke. Okay, so we're looking at both eyes when we look at something like that. So pinpoint always tells about a narcotic that is in their system, and that's why we look at pupils, because pupil tells a lot, right? They'll still react. But it's really hard to see. And when you go in with the light, you can't go straight on because a lot of times there'll be cataracts or you won't see it. Always come in on the side. You can take your cell phone like this in the mirror when you get home and go like this. You're going to see your pupils react, right? So this bottom one, you can't really, you can see it, it's dilated. So when someone's pupils are dilated, there's a couple things that will tell us why it's dilated. One, they just visited the eye doctor, they dilated, right? Two is alcohol. Alcohol is going to dilate the pupil, okay? It will react, but it will be sluggish, okay? And another way we will see a dilated pupil will be like your cocaine. Cocaine is very dilated, right? Do you guys think of anything else with dilated pupils? Basically just cocaine, that, right? Yeah. So those are when you look at somebody's pupil, it's going to be something really quick, okay? And I always did that to my elderly if we had someone that was passed out and we didn't know why. Because I wanted to see, was it a narcotic based symptom that they were having, okay? We'll ask questions yet. Okay, so this is some timing of things, of medication or drugs that would be in the system. So if we look at methadone, the duration on methadone is 24 to 34 hours, right? So look at the NARCAN. NARCAN or naloxone will wear off within 30 to 90 minutes. So you can see if someone is given the NARCAN, they should go to the hospital, right? They should go because you don't know if it's going to overcome it. Heroin, 6 to 8 hours. Oxycontin, 3 to 6 hours. Morphine, 3 to 6 hours. Fentanyl, 2 to 4 hours. I think it's a little less because fentanyl is very short, it's called a short half-life. It's a very short-acting fentanyl. But when you combine it with something, it will last longer. Because fentanyl is close to, I think it's 10 times stronger than morphine, right? And so now as you hear that we heard about fentanyl, and then we start seeing the carfentanil, which is 100 times potent than morphine. And then there's now arfentanil out there. So it's like I said, it's kind of crazy on the stuff that we're seeing out there. Okay, we'll go back to that one. So as I said, the NARCAN is going to last anywhere from 30 minutes to 90 minutes. All right, so when you take, when someone is given the NARCAN, what happens is that it bumps those opioid receptors. It will bump it off and replace it with the NARCAN. So it just keeps bouncing off it, right? And when I mean it bounces it off, it takes it out right now. You give someone NARCAN, within 15 to 30 seconds usually, you'll get some type of reaction. Are they going to come up? Will they start breathing right away? You're going to get some type of reaction because it's bumping those those narcotics off of the brain receptors. Okay, so Narcan in action, it works on any opiate at any time, right? If you give somebody it and they take Vicodin for pain or something like that, it's going to take that away, right? So it's going to act at any time. It reverses the effects, the sedation, the respiratory depression. We know narcotics or opiates is a respiratory depressant. So what that means is it doesn't stop the heart. What it does is it decreases that respiratory drive. So the more you take it, the more it decreases that respiratory drive, right? And eventually your heart stops. So that's why they go into cardiac arrest. A lot of times you'll see it's called the death rattle, where you just get the snoring respirations because they're struggling for breath, but it's their respiratory drive shutting down. It causes sudden withdrawal, an unpleasant experience. So they are out of it completely, and you give it, and then they come out of it completely. They're mad, they're angry, they're sick, they might have some withdrawal symptoms, they might be vomiting, right? They don't know what happened. It all depends, right? But the thing is, they're alive. And the thing with Narcan is, the reason why we give it is to give them another chance to help them get help. It's not so that they can go on their merry way and continue, it's to get them help. When Narcan went in the community, it was like, why do we want to give to them? They're just going to turn around and do it again. It's an illness. It's part of that stigma. It's to give them another day. Okay? So it doesn't make them high. Narcan doesn't make them high. Doesn't make them sleepy, doesn't make them high, doesn't do anything. It doesn't affect them that way. It's routinely given by EMS, but our police officers are carrying it now. They all carry it. I mean, it's everywhere now. And that's a good thing, because you just never know when it's going to happen. There'll be no effect on the individual if the opiate is not present. So if I give it to somebody, right, we usually give it when they're unresponsive. If we give it and there's no response, it's not going to hurt them. We know that it's not a narcotic base. So the nasal Narcan will save a life. Each kit comes with 2 4-milligram doses, which is great. Your CPR face shield, sterile gloves, a reference card, the Oakland County Resource Guide, and the Sober Support Unit information. Okay? They want you to report it, and it's not to get them in trouble, but it's so that we can keep track so we can start helping these people. Okay, so the steps to administering Narcan. First is to call 911, right? You always need backup, because what happens if you have so much drug in the system that you can't get them to come around? Don't delay by calling 911. Don't delay calling 911 by helping them out. Make sure you get them coming. Step 2 is do not disturb the area. We're going to check for consciousness, sternum rub, or check the breathing, right? You know, even by shaking them, hey, are you okay? The sternum rub, because a lot of times they might react to pain, right? We want to get some type of response out of them. If they grunt, it's a response, right? We want to look at the breathing. Look nose to belly. Is their belly moving? Is their chest moving? Are they getting some type of movement? That will help you know if they're breathing. Step 3, give the nasal Narcan. So how this comes, you'll have 2 of these. It's in a sealed pack, right? It's a plunger type Narcan. So there's 4 milligrams in here, and you'll get 2 of them. So what you're going to do is the 3 P's. It's going to peel, peel, place, and press. So what you're going to do is you're going to peel this off, and you want to make sure that you do it at that time. Don't open them. And you want to tilt the individual's head back. And the reason why we tilt the head back is because we want to get it into the airway, right? We want to tilt the head back, and then what you're going to do is you're going to hold the Narcan like this, between the 2 fingers and the thumb, okay, like this, and you're going to put it in their nose, all the way to where your fingers hits the nose. This nose is a little small. So you're going to put it all the way in there, right, and with your 2 fingers and your thumb, with the head back, and you're going to depress the plunger quickly, not slowly, quickly, just like this, right? And you're going to hold it there. What I say, if you can remember, try to plug the nose, because sometimes what can happen is it can come around and go out the other side. If you can remember to plug the nose, push hard, push fast, and plug the nose. Okay? Now, it's just sitting there, right? It's just sitting in the nose. We want some way to stimulate that person to get it going, right? So if I just give them the NARCAN and it's just sitting there, how can I stimulate them, right? I can do this all day long. We already know it doesn't work. If you do a couple rounds of CPR, you can actually see how the blood is starting to move, and it's going to get in that system quicker, right? You can see just by doing the compressions that blood is going to the brain, because we want that to knock it off the receptors, right? Okay. So what you're going to do is you're going to wait 3 minutes. Good thing in the suburban area, a response time is anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes. So that's a good thing, right? If there's no changes in the victim's condition, go ahead and give them the second dose. Try to do it in the second, in the other nostril. You know, if you don't, I mean, it's okay, but try to switch them, right? Because that's already coated. The more surfaces we can get coated, the more it's going to get into the system, right? Because we want to knock that off the brain, the receptors off of the brain, replace them with the NARCAN to get their respiratory drive going. We know, too, by doing compressions, those of you that have taken CPR, we know hands-only compressions work, right? We're doing compressions not only to get the blood going and to get the heart going, but also to oxygenate the brain and the heart, the most vital organs there are, right? So by doing that, and you are going to be getting oxygen in there, because we know that good compressions will get oxygen in there to get oxygen to the brain. So step 6 is a recovery position. 1, we know they're going to go through withdrawals, so they're going to come up. If they don't, and they just start breathing, that's okay. That's what we want. We want them to breathe. If they don't come completely out of it, it's okay if they just are breathing, right? Because that's what we want. We want them to breathe. So we want to place them in a recovery position, and what you do is you put one arm behind the head and put the leg up, and then you roll them over. And the reason why we do that is we're protecting their airway. When they're on their side, if they vomit, then they're not going to choke on it, right? You put the leg up and the arm up, it's going to protect them. You can see here, so if he vomits, you know, which could happen, it's going to protect his airway, because that's what we want to do. If they come up, they might have some agitated behavior. It is not the time to be telling them what they did wrong. Do you know what you just did? You know, you just tried to kill yourself, right? Or why are you doing this again? I mean, how helpful is that, right? You're not going to reason with somebody there. You know, because it is an illness, let's get you to the hospital. You can argue, scream with them all you want. You're not going to reason with someone in that state of mind. Okay, proper storage of the NARCAN. It has to be stored at a room temperature between 59 and 77 degrees. What does that mean? It can't stay in your car in the summer and the winter, right? You can carry it on person, right? If it's exposed a little bit, but not much. But we want to make sure that we give them the best possible chance to live. You have to store it properly. Maybe store it short periods of time. We don't want to freeze it. Just because it expires and we freeze it doesn't make it any better. Keep it in the box until ready to use, and we want to protect from light. All medication should be checked from light. The thing with medication is that when it expires, it doesn't get toxic, it just loses its efficacy, right? So we want to replace it after it's been used or expired, right? So if you have it expired, don't open it, don't give it away, don't throw it away. Call Alliance and let her advise you on what to do with it. Okay, so never throw medication in the garbage, because who knows who could get it, and then it ends up in our water system. The number is down there, and I'm sure it's probably on paper and stuff, right? So the Good Samaritan law. So there's been some changes in this recently, right? So the Good Samaritan says that if you help somebody and you do everything the way you were taught, or what a prudent layperson would do, they can't come after you legally. They can try all day long, right? But they can't. They would not win the case if you really tried to save their life. You can still try to save someone's life, but they still die, right? If you try everything. Now, if you decided like I don't really want to touch them, but I'll go ahead and stimulate them with my foot, and they die, you could be held responsible. Okay. But the law also says that if somebody is overdosed in a house and you call, that you won't be held responsible, correct? You want to touch on that right now, Ann? No, okay. So that's a new law. So it used to be that people were afraid to call. So they changed the law, like if someone overdoses or has it, or you think they can call and they won't be You will be held liable or criminally liable. Yeah, criminally liable. Okay, so that's a good thing that we're starting to see that they can call. Oh, is this it? So, all right, so the other part is seeking medical assistance means reporting a drug overdose in medical emergency law to the 911 system or poison control, or assisting someone in reporting a drug overdose other than medical emergency. Means you can't be criminally held responsible.
So there are several resources that'll be in your kit this evening. So in there, you'll have an access to treatment card, but you'll also receive the resource guide. How many of you have heard about the Sober Support Unit in Oakland County? With a show of hands, raise them high for me. All right, let me tell you about this amazing facility. This is a 24/7 facility where if you know someone who is struggling with addiction and they say to you, I'm ready to get help, if you know, you usually have that kind of a window, right, when they tell you that, and it closes fast. You don't have to wait, just go. Take them right up to 1200 North Telegraph, building 32E, check them right in, and it is amazing. They are treated like human beings. They can take a shower, they can eat, they can change their clothes, they will be given comfort meds, but the important thing is they're gonna be into treatment super fast. So no more do I wanna hear somebody tell me, because I know it's a big fat fib, I couldn't get my person into treatment for 2 weeks. That's not true, okay? So I'm here to change your ears on that. If it's Oakland County, they're an Oakland County resident, they can go up through the Sober Support Unit right away. They are met with an EMT and a nurse who will guide them and watch their vital signs. If this situation happens after 4 p.m., because everything happens between 8 and 4, right? In a perfect world, but it doesn't work that way. So typically what will happen is they'll have a peer recovery coach there who will keep them off the ledge, so to speak, until they can get placed into treatment the following morning. That is so important to have someone like-minded who's been through their scenario, sit with them, guide them, keep them comfortable, and keep them calm. These are our meetings. This is what they look like. So you'll see one sheet and where all the meetings are and what the topic is. Again, these are for the family and support groups meetings that we meet with. Resolve is a super amazing program that we are very proud of at the Alliance. It's actually a comprehensive 6-module course. The 7th module is a graduation. This program was designed to help people in the early stages of recovery figure out how to live life on life's terms. There is nothing worse than telling someone when they leave jail, prison, or rehab, here you go live life on life's terms. When we don't know when the mental health condition or the drug addiction started, the substance use disorder started, that you might be talking to a 14-year-old mentally, right? We have to re-equip them. We have to help them navigate what that process looks like. If they go through this whole program, the transformation is unbelievable. Young people, old people, it doesn't matter. When we go through the counseling portion of treatment, usually what happens is they come in and they're tapping their watch saying, oh, what are we going to talk about today? I don't know. What do you want to talk about? This course gives them the opportunity to open the doors and discuss with their counselor, hey, you know what? I might be struggling with an anger issue, and maybe my avoidance is causing this. So they're starting to recognize what their triggers are and what their relapse patterns have become. It handles all of physical healing, grief, and loss, which happens to be my favorite because it deals with shame and anger, depression, just so many different things. Financial health, when they stop using substances or alcohol, now they have money. They have no idea what to do with it, right? So it's a good tactic in teaching them what to do. A lot face legal challenges, so we will connect them with the right kind of attorney to help them navigate that challenge as well. Interpersonal relationships. Tiffany hit on this right at the very beginning. Holidays are the heightened time for an overdose to occur. I come from just a quiet Serbian family. If anybody knows about Serbians, they're not quiet. But I married into a Greek family, and it is loud, and someone always leaves angry. So you have a lot of these dynamics going on. If you've been struggling with mental health or substance use disorder, this will send them right over the top. Think about your loved one. Think about those people. Try to keep that scenario very, very calm for them. And you know what? It's okay to say, no, we can't go to that event this year. It's not okay this year, okay? Don't go into any other reasons why. So right now we are going to have Chief come on up and Captain come on up. See, I'm just not going to give your names out now. And as well as Tiffany from the coalition standpoint. They are here to directly answer all of your questions that you may have with regards to an overdose.
And let me just start off by thanking a few people who did a lot for this program. We'll start with you. So Tracy, we appreciate you for reaching out and putting this together. Certainly, Ms. Tiffany Tilley from the Southfield Anti-Drug Coalition. And some members of the coalition are here as well. We have Detective Reston. He's really on the right hand when it comes to training. So thank you for being here. And of course, another dynamic presentation from Captain Medici. So give him a round of applause. Yeah. What was mentioned earlier is that the police department is equipped with the NARCAN device. All of our patrol officers, when we go out in the field, we do carry the device, and we train annually on this deployment. If I can share with you briefly, we have saved 3 lives already this year. One was a child who got a hold of some drugs that unfortunately their parents had lying around, but officers responded very quickly, were able to revive that child. There was an individual that was involved in a car accident. The officer responded, the person was unresponsive, deployed the NARCAN, brought that person back. And then the most recent event was just last month at one of the local hotels where a woman was suffering from drug overdose. Quick response times, again, we have to bring that person back. And so the importance of this training is to equip the community with the NARCAN, because you're already there. As the captain mentioned, response times are pretty good at 3 to 5 minutes, but if you're already there and you're properly trained, you can help save lives as well. So I just wanted to start off with that piece. Thank you. And at this point, we can open up the floor for questions.
I have a question. So you have to get the person and lay them down? You can't give it to them when they're sitting? Like, I've seen videos of people sitting in their car.
Yes, they don't have to be in any position. If you can lay them down, go ahead and lay them down. If you don't want to take any more time, you can, while sitting up, we want the head back. But the key thing is to get it to get it in there and to stimulate them.
Any more questions?
Is the information on the sober support unit in our packet, or is it back there?
It is. It will be in your each Save a Life kit, will be a card for the sober support unit. Please keep that on your refrigerator.
Does the liquid version work faster than, is there an injectable version?
It's all the same stuff. So it's injectable, and then they also have the nasal, or we have IV. It all works fast. The injectable takes a little bit longer because it's got to get in the blood system. So the preferred would be IV, but not everyone has IV. Next is going to be the nasal because of the surface area, and then of course the injectable. Because sometimes we can't find an IV, we will give the injectable.
What's the youngest and the oldest that someone could use this?
The NARCAN,
Yeah.
you can you can, on any overdose, it doesn't have an age. It doesn't have an age. So a lot of times people don't want to think that a 2-year-old kind of acting funny or a lot of times they might think that they had a seizure or something. We've seen a couple things with kids. The hand sanitizer, what do they like to do? They like to lick it. So their alcohol content is up, so they're drunk. Another thing too is that they get a hold of medication. You know how you can tell?
That was a great question.
Okay, they're in the car. Can you like let the seat back and give it to them like
You
that?
can sit straight up and put their head back.
Oh,
A lot of times they're either forward, right? So by putting their head back, just right by sitting up straight.
Could you clarify, though, for the audience, tonight you were trained to call 911, and a lot of times what we're seeing is vehicles that are still running. The vehicle is in drive. It's obvious that there has been an overdose. I want you to answer that one because you haven't been trained to do certain things.
So if you come across somebody and their car is still running, you want to be really careful because you can stimulate them. What are they going to do? Is their foot on the gas or is it on the brake, right? If you can, try to put it in park. Shut it off, put it in park before you start messing around with them quickly. Because like I said, it only takes a second, they could slip up and then they're in traffic, they drug you with them. So you want to be careful, try to just shut it off or put it in park.
We have been approaching regularly the businesses, the fast food restaurants, and there's a little bit of a pushback, and I understand because, that raises flags, right? What have we been talking about all night? Stigma. And so if I say this is going on here, who's going to come to my establishment? So they're not understanding that it's happening in the parking lot. You heard me just say last Thursday night, I witnessed it myself. I did not see any of their employees, but it also comes down to policies and procedures. But let's also, in fairness to all of our businesses, this is very new. So this kind of response time, it has always been medical. Then the next step was our law enforcement. Then the next step was you and I. So they feel and have always felt to use our 911 system to respond to any emergency, be it a heart attack, be it choking. Their normal response has been 911. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? We can't really fault them. But here's the unique thing with you guys being trained tonight. You have the ability to make that call to 911 if you see this in the parking lot and stay there by the vehicle, describe to dispatch. I am behind vehicle such and such. I am in G1. I am dressed this way. My hand will be up. Because for our first responders, always law enforcement always accompanies the EMS and fire. You can't imagine if they don't know where you are, it's like looking for a needle in a haystack. So if you are giving that explicit direction, which is what occurred last Thursday night, and I was watching this whole thing unfold, there was no downtime. Our law enforcement was there, the EMS was there. It was like amazing magic all in work. But they were a part of it. You're still a part of it if you're not administering NARCAN. You are being a voice, you're contacting 911. You are giving every valuable descriptor possible to the dispatch. A lot of times, I don't know about Southfield, but a lot of the communities through dispatch will ask you if you have access to NARCAN, and then they will then walk you through the steps. So you don't have to remember all of these steps. They're not hard to remember anyway, but sometimes when we learned here tonight, it was very calm, right? But the real scenario is not calm. It's very chaotic if you've ever been involved in an overdose situation.
Just to add to what she's saying, so if you find yourself at a scene where you're trying to help someone and you forget some of the steps, as I mentioned before, we're trained annually. That includes our dispatchers, so they will be able to walk you through step by step to help revive that person. And also, you make a good question, and mention the businesses, because as we said in the presentation, that some of these people are going to these parking lots because of activity, and it does happen. And so the help from you, what we'll be doing is going out to these businesses, the ones that's known for this type of activity, and having those conversations through our community relations officers. But again, you guys have that training as well, and you get to hold businesses accountable too. Now, businesses are afraid sometimes of the liability, but that's why the laws here, they need to be educated. Part of this training is education and awareness.
I wasn't gonna say it, but I'm gonna say it now. Addiction, which is part of the stigma, hits every family. My son was 33 and lost his life 3 years ago to overdose. My husband being a narcotic canine officer, I work for the fire department, saved a lot of lives. So it hits everywhere, right? I did not have the resource, the NARCAN at home, though he wasn't at home. He started on prescription, moved to Kratom, which is, you can buy in a store, smoke place, right? It's a tea that they sell, it's an opiate based, and because he couldn't get it, within 3 days went to heroin and passed away. So it's not just an opiate, it's not just the medication, it's stuff that leads up to it, it's the addiction. And I was one of the ones that was part of that stigma, like, you're taking it, stop it, right? Until to the loss of my son, did I realize that this is truly an illness, and then I started giving back to the community. So it's not just a prescription medication that we're looking for. We're looking for everything with addictive properties that will move up, because it just starts with one.
I came from the east side of Detroit, so I can relate to what the young lady was saying. And it's like no family has been untouched by this. It's like the plague of Egypt. So we don't have to be ashamed anymore. We can talk about it in the schools, in church, to our neighbors, to everybody, because this is unbelievable. I'm reading 25% of my Americans is hooked on opiates. I'm like, it's 300 million of them. I can't digest it. I can't. The numbers are mind-boggling. But we have to put our dukes up and punch this devil in the nose, because he is evil to the 10th magnitude.
Absolutely, thank you.
And that's why I'm here today, to learn, to take some of the information back and have something, if someone in the neighborhood, if they at the grocery store, they've been falling out everywhere over on the east side. It's like they just poisoning us. So we're asking for everyone's help, and I, for one, am willing to help.
So we're gonna do 1, 2, and then 3, ma'am.
I just had an experience last week, if I can just share it, and if you guys could tell me anything I could have done differently. I was on my way to work and in the car, and there was a van that had crashed into the guardrail in Southfield, actually. And no one was there yet, and the woman said her fiance overdosed on heroin, and he was seizing. I have a medical background too, so I'm CPR certified, but so he was seizing in the front seat, and she was in the process of getting him out. He's already getting trigger, so he's like stiffening up, and then so he was half out of their van, and she was trying to kind of keep him away. I didn't know what was going on at first. I thought it was a domestic dispute because she was like, smacking him and stuff. So I got him. I pulled over, got him in the car, and we got him out of the front seat because he's already about halfway out, and then brought him down to the ground and put something underneath his head just so he wasn't like convulsive seizures. But so he started going blue and was losing. I did compressions, and he ended up not like right after I did them because that was all I could think of to do through compressions. And he came back, and then the ambulance and the fire department were there, but there was like a good lapse of time that like I just felt really helpless. I've never, and like someone there was like someone have an EpiPen, which obviously that's the last thing you want to do. I knew they meant Narcan, but then also there wasn't police there, and the woman ended up, so EMS came, and I told them that she had told me he overdosed on heroin, and then, but she, like, so by the time he was already in the gurney in the ambulance, but then she just got in the van and went right after them too, so I was nervous for her too, just because I'm sure that he was seizing in the car, and then just me just was trying to brainstorm like how that happened. So
Okay, so first of all, you did the right thing. If you didn't have Narcan, you know, CPR, just by doing CPR was enough to get his respiratory drive going, right?
yeah, I only did compression.
No,
so.
that's okay. That's, I mean, we know hands only works because they're gonna get oxygen in and out the mouth by positive negative pressure in the chest. So I told you the only time I ever did CPR was 26 years as a medic off duty. I had nothing. I didn't even have a Narcan kit on me. And I did compressions for 8 minutes and I was able to walk her to the stretcher. Because you're giving her that, or you're giving them that oxygen enough to get their respiratory drive going. It's not a heart issue. It's a respiratory issue. If it goes too long, it becomes a heart issue. But just by giving that oxygen going is enough to get his heart going, enough to get his respiratory drive. You did everything right.
Yeah, I have a very basic question about young people. In the high schools, middle schools, the use of drugs and stuff, have this NARCAN training been implemented in our educational institutions or anything like that? Or are there rules and regulations against it?
Well, as far as bringing it in through the schools, we offer, ooh, that's a bright light. We offer a training to the teachers, the staff, the janitorial people, so that they are equipped with the Narcan. So far, we are working with Southfield to get them on the books for first part of the year. As far as training the students, we have been coming through to the Oakland technical schools. We cannot issue a Narcan kit because they're under the age of 18, but they're pretty gosh darn smart, and just teaching them the basics of saving a life, as our captains and our chiefs are talking this evening. Compression, CPR is perfect, but the bigger thing is they have a phone. All of them have this. Right. Call 911, you know, be there to help that. Because our standing order is issued through a doctor, and he said 18, that's all we can do. So we have to respect those wishes.
Just to touch on that, so there are some certain cases where family members may have an addict within the family, and children that are old enough to comprehend what an overdose looks like and what a doctor may prescribe them a Narcan kit. And then it was just today that I was told by our chief, the fire chief, that every school in Southfield is going to be have 3 trainers right in the school to carry Narcan. So that's, you know, and then you guys have it.
So we have school resource officers that, again, are equipped in the schools.
The young lady mentioned that with fentanyl, she was afraid to touch. What was it? I'd never heard of that.
Will you elaborate on that?
Can you elaborate on what touching?
With fentanyl, it can come in a powdered or a liquid form, and if you touch it in the skin, you absorb it fairly quickly. Okay, so was she saying that because she came across her daughter, that at the time they didn't know it was fentanyl, she may have been contaminated with the fentanyl. So they were probably concerned with her at the time of the scene, is what I'm gathering, right? It was the time of the scene, right?
Yes.
Yes. So if you touch it, you can absorb it and then overdose, depending on the strength, because we don't know what the strength is.
Just by touching the person.
Well, if it's on them, we don't know if it, because it comes in a liquid form and a powdered form, and you know, if they spilled it and you touch them, you may get it on you and absorb it.
Does it come in a patch too? So if you have a patch
So
in a certain
they
area,
do have fentanyl
touch that
patches,
area?
right? So if you have loved ones that have the fentanyl or the Duragesic patches, they always say make sure that you use gloves to take the patch off because it's absorbed. That's why they put it on the skin. You can absorb it through the skin.
That's why it just bears reminding everybody, when in doubt, if you suspect something, just call 911. There's always a minimum of 8 police officers out in Southfield, plus the fire department. Just when in doubt, get us rolling as soon as possible as well. If you're not for sure, you see residue along the face, it is a valid concern with fentanyl.
Just explain what fentanyl is. What is it?
Fentanyl is a synthetic opioid, so it means it was developed and it was used for pain management. Okay, it was widely used not that long ago, a few years ago, where it was used to get away from morphine, right? And so it's a synthetic drug that they used for moderate to high pain. So low pain, they would kind of use like a Tylenol, Motrin. And then your middle, you use something else. Well, moderate to high is they're going to use your morphine, your fentanyl, that type of thing. Duragesic, Percocets, those kind of things. We're finding a lot of fentanyl is coming from overseas in big quantities. And so what's happening is because it's a stronger, more addictive opiate, they are cutting the heroin with it. So, but the problem is that we're losing more people because of it, right? Because heroin is cheaper than fentanyl, but they can get fentanyl easier than heroin. If that makes sense.
So, how's everybody feeling? You feeling like you're well informed, well trained now?